Okay. All right. So yesterday, guys, we got through like 3 or 4, and we're up to number 19. Okay, and we're going to finish this today. All right. Now, the session I have on Monday, where you won't be here, guys, is an important video to watch because I'm going to explain what all these numbers mean. So we're going to be adding up your yeses and nos, and I'm going to tell you what those mean, and I'm going to go beyond that and talk about some other, like the ideas, ideologies when it comes to things like libertarianism or socialism, and looking at social issues versus economic issues versus foreign policy issues and so forth. Okay, so that's going to be it's going to explain all this. Okay, so let's get to work. Number 19 says support a constitutional amendment defining marriage as one man and one woman. Okay, I'm going to put a case up here. Oberg Fell versus Hodges, 2015. Okay, this is the case just 5 years ago that used the 14th Amendment. The Supreme Court did. You guys remember the 14th Amendment? Okay, that is equal protection under the law for all citizens. Okay, so guys, for more than 170 years, 180, 200 years, the way marriage was defined was between one man and one woman. No states had gay marriage. The country didn't have gay marriage. It just wasn't something that existed when the Constitution was written. Okay, so it was assumed it was between one man and one woman because that's what everybody did. Okay, that began to change. All right. So in 2003, Massachusetts became the first state to allow for gay marriage. Okay. Now, this is the way it's supposed to be done. Okay, where the elected legislature in Massachusetts, the people elect those people, they pass the laws for that state. Okay, in their state capital. All right. Then Hawaii, and then I think it was maybe Connecticut. Okay, so you had a few states passing this gay marriage. Okay, and that's what their people wanted. That's what they voted for their elected officials, and they said we want gay marriage, and so the elected officials passed it. Okay, that's the way it's supposed to work. Now, there's a problem here. Because in this country, people move from one state to another. I've lived in Illinois, lived in Indiana, Florida, Louisiana, Georgia, and Kansas. Okay, so I've lived in 6 states. Okay, any of you guys ever live in a different state? Okay, you might at some point. Okay, so what if somebody from Massachusetts has a gay marriage, okay, a gay couple, moves to Kansas? Does Kansas have to recognize that marriage? Okay, now prior to 2015, they didn't. Okay, but the Constitution has this thing in it called the full faith and credit clause. Okay, where it says one state must recognize another state's official documents. Here's my driver's license from Kansas. Okay, can I use this in Oklahoma? What do you mean? Can I drive in Oklahoma with this? Yeah. Okay. Now, if I move to Oklahoma, I'll probably need to get a new one, right? But I can drive in all of the other 49 states with this, yes? Because the Constitution says that the other states have to give full faith and credit to the official documents of another state. Okay? States issue marriage licenses. That doesn't come from the federal government. Okay? So under the Constitution, Kansas would have to recognize that, even though we don't have gay marriage in our state. That was a problem. Okay, so Congress, the U.S. Congress passed a law called the Defense of Marriage Act. Okay, this was actually signed into law by Democratic President Bill Clinton. And what this said was that Kansas and other states that don't have gay marriage do not have to honor those marriages. Okay, because gay marriage has benefits. If you're married and you have a couple, you pay less in taxes than if you're single, filing separately. Okay, there's also other benefits like hospital visitation. You ever hear that? Where like only family members can visit, type of situation. Okay, that's another benefit of marriage. Another is like inheritance. So like if your husband or wife dies, okay, the other person, inherits that, what they have. Okay, obviously there's a will and stuff like that. Okay, but if there is no will, it's going to go to the next, their spouse. Okay, so you can understand why gay couples might want to get married or have marriage because of those benefits. Yes. Okay. So this law saying that Kansas doesn't have to violates this in the Constitution. Yes. So which is more powerful, the Constitution or a law passed by Congress? Which trumps the other? The Constitution is the supreme law of the land. So laws that violate this are held unconstitutional when the Supreme Court says so. But with this law, it stood for more than 10 years without the Supreme Court saying it was unconstitutional. Everybody knew it was unconstitutional when they passed it, but they passed it anyways because the country wasn't ready to deal with this issue of gay marriage. Okay, guys, attitudes on this have changed like light speed in the last 20 years on this issue. Okay, you have to understand. I mean, if you tried to pass a constitutional amendment defining marriage as one man and one woman 30 years ago, you might have had a chance. But that ship is sailed. This Supreme Court case in 2015 says that marriage between same-sex couples is a right. They created it, the Supreme Court did. I mean, it's not in there. It doesn't say that. They just created it. See, if you remember, the 14th Amendment was passed right after slavery, right? And so they said equal protection law for all citizens, basically saying that you could not discriminate based on race, okay, or national origin. Okay, the 14th Amendment to this day, and I'm in here with a group of ladies, okay, does not see women, gender is not mentioned in the 14th Amendment. So if gender had been mentioned, would women have gotten the right to vote with this amendment? If they mentioned gender, yes. Women would have been given the right to vote with the 14th Amendment. We wouldn't have to wait till the 19th. In fact, the 15th Amendment gives black or colored men the right to vote. Okay, so the fact that the Supreme Court found this right of gay marriage in the 14th Amendment is constitutionally silly. It's not there, okay? But they created it with their decision, 5-4. This was a 5-4 decision by the Supreme Court. So this morning, I was just kind of reading up on this a little bit for class. So I was reading what some of the four said about the majority decision. And they're just like, the Supreme Court is 9 people. This should be done in state legislatures where the people elect the leaders. We don't elect these Supreme Court justices. They're creating laws or finding rights in the Constitution that don't exist. This should be done by legislatures. Elected officials should make these decisions, not the Supreme Court. You follow me on that? This is something that is part and parcel to our system, okay? This is what you would call judicial activism. We're 9 people that are not elected. You guys, 8 of the 9 are from New York. 1 is from California. All 9 of them went to either Harvard or Yale Law School. They're all lawyers. Now, right now on the court, there are 6 Catholics and 3 Jews. There are no Protestants on the Supreme Court. Now, for most of our history, the whole Supreme Court was white male Protestant. Okay, now there's no white male Protestants. There are some white male Catholics. Okay, but it's interesting. So one of these judges is like, you have the majority of the or the plurality of the population is white Protestant, and you're making this decision instead of the states making this decision. Okay, and that's one of the big arguments we have in government class is how do we, as a people, govern ourselves? Okay, is that what we want? 9 non-elected officials that share nothing in common with the majority of the American people to make these decisions? Okay, but it is what it is, and it's like I said, that ship has sailed, and so now, if you try to pass a constitutional amendment defining marriage as one man, one woman, it's very difficult to pass. We've only had 17 amendments since the Bill of Rights. You got to have 2/3 of both houses of Congress to propose it. You got to have 38 states, 3/4 of the states, to ratify an amendment. Trying to pass that amendment today wouldn't see the light of day. Okay, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about your opinion. Okay, do you think? Would you support a constitutional amendment supporting marriage as one man, one woman? Okay. And I think you guys know some of the arguments about this just based on, being in a Catholic school for 12 years, that you probably know a little bit about, I don't know, some of the biblical and moral and so forth. Okay. So you guys could kind of, where you're at. Now, your generation is way different than my generation, and certainly different than your grandparents' generation on this issue. Okay. But I would tell you this, that both parties, Republican and Democrats, I mean, Donald Trump is like in the history of the Republican Party, is like the least anti-gay rights Republican president we've ever had. Because when Barack Obama ran for president in 2008, just 12 years ago, he was opposed to gay marriage. When he ran for president. That's how much we've changed in 12 years. Okay? It's really not an issue for most people. Okay? For most voters. But you have your own opinion. So use it. Okay? Number 20. This is good. This is good. I got a bunch of women in here and no men represented. Okay. Well, Paul's in there. He's my student aide. Okay. So, all right. I know I got 2 volleyball players in here. Any of you guys ever play sports? What do you do? Cross country? Tennis. Yeah. All right. So Title IX. Have you heard of this? Okay, it's an equal. This goes back to affirmative action in the 1964 Civil Rights Act. We did affirmative action. It was like the first one we did, where you had where you try to give preferences to minorities for getting into college, for jobs, right, and for government contracts, for businesses. Okay. Well, this is equal number of scholarships in colleges and facilities. So even if this goes down, extends down into high school and middle school sports as well. So if we build a new fence for the baseball field, or we put lights on the baseball field, we also have to put lights on the softball field. You following me? That's what Title IX does. Now, when it comes to scholarships for athletic, okay, now we don't do this for academic. We do this for athletic, okay? Because still, I guess there is still an academic component to college where some people are better at it than others, right? For now. which the ACT helps inform us of. Okay. All right. So with this, an equal number of scholarships for male and female sports. There's one big issue with this, and it's called college football. Okay. Now, it's the biggest revenue producer. Most college sports lose money. Okay, especially like at the D1 level. Okay, so you talk about the University of, or Wichita State University track and field. Okay, you have 60 female athletes, you have 60 male athletes. So if Wichita State goes down to Florida Southern for a track meet, okay, all those kids are gonna have to fly. That's expensive. Now, how many people are showing up at the track meets paying, $7 to get in to watch the track meet? Is that going to pay for those airline tickets? Hell no. Okay? But with football, right, and especially at major colleges, it brings in, you have all the merchandise, all the jersey sales, you have all the concession sales, all the ticket sales. It's just massive amounts of money. Okay? That sport, football, helps fund all the other sports. Now you take Wichita State volleyball, women's volleyball. They're in the top 10 in attendance in the country. So they're putting enough seats, butts in the seats, paying admission to the volleyball games, which I've been to quite a few in my time, and I've paid to go in, and that helps fund volleyball. Okay? So it may actually break even or maybe make a profit. Wichita State baseball used to be like, in the College World Series. Like they won it in '89, but they went there like 4 times in a short span. Guys packing out Wichita State. So the baseball program was in the top 10 in people coming to games. But it's not like that right now. Okay, and Wichita State doesn't have football. But KU does, I think, right? They still have a football program. But basketball at KU probably brings in more revenue than football. That's a rarity. Okay, you got to have a really bad football program for the basketball program. Yeah. Okay. Anyhow, so here's the thing. 85 scholarships for Division I football. 85 full rides. Okay? So in order to create an equal number of scholarships at these D1 schools, you've either got to cut male sports or add female sports to offset that. So like at K-State, do they have women's soccer there? Yeah. Do they have men's soccer? No. Okay? The biggest victims of this are male sports. And the big ones are wrestling, college wrestling, and college baseball. Okay? College baseball team has 35 players on it. Okay? They get 11 scholarships. Softball gets 11 scholarships. But with baseball, you need 12 or 13 pitchers. With softball, you only need 3. Because softball, this is a natural motion for the arm, and you can pitch all day. Okay? This is an unnatural motion, and you can't pitch every day, or you're going to have surgery. Okay? So you see what happens to male sports. We used to have a wrestling coach here. His name was Mark Stovall. If you go back and look at our state championships, he had like 4 while he was here. He's a great wrestling coach. He was wrestling at LSU on a full ride. Okay? They had a meeting at the end of the season, called all the wrestlers, and then said, sorry guys, we have to inform you, we're dropping the wrestling program. Okay? Northern Iowa, which is in the Missouri Valley that Wichita State used to be in, they dropped their baseball program about 7 years ago. Okay? Now this has been great for women. Okay? Because before this, there weren't a lot of women athletics in college. Okay? And so you would play through high school, ladies, and then it would be like, that's it. Okay? Now we're giving opportunities to women, and the benefits of that show up every 4 years in the Olympics. The most dominant team in the world, male or female, the American women's team. When you do the Summer Olympics, the American women score more medals than any other group in the country. The Winter Olympics, very similar. Okay? It's given opportunities to women. Okay? I have a daughter that's in sports. I support that. But it does come at the detriment of men. Okay? Now, in a perfect world, which we don't have, you could take college football out of the equation and then have an equal number of scholarships from there. There's no other women's team that has 85 participants, you know what I mean, that offsets football. You know, if they did women's college football and you had that many girls that played, you could do it. Do any of you guys play golf? Are you good at golf, ladies? There are thousands of women's golf scholarships that go unused every year. There's just not enough women that play. So if you're decent at golf and you need money for college, now you're going to have to practice a lot. You know what I mean? Like every day. You're going to, I mean, it's a job. College athletics is a job. But you get scholarships for it. Okay? So yeah, that's an interesting dilemma to support this or not support this. You know what I mean? Now I'm talking to an all-female group right here. Okay. Not sure how you feel about, you know, guys, Emporia State baseball, 5.5 scholarships for 36 players. 5.5. Okay. Brutal. Okay. Emporia State football, they get a bunch. Okay. That's a D2 level. So it even gets worse at the D2 level. D1 level, they get 11 for baseball. Maybe 11.5. Same thing with track. So it's an interesting dilemma. Yeah.
So the Title IX makes it so like Emporia State has to do 5.5 for baseball, 5.5 for softball.
No, they'll have more for softball because of football.
What is like the exact thing Emporia or Title IX is saying?
It's saying that there has to be equality in men and women's facilities and scholarships. The number, the total number.
Okay, total.
Total number.
Because football takes up so many of them.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, football takes up 85, so the men are starting with 85. Okay, so other male sports. Now you play tennis. I don't know. Do they have men's tennis at Wichita State? I know they have women's tennis. I don't know if they have men's. Okay. So you know what I mean. So like you two, right? You two right there. You guys are tall. You're strong. Okay. You guys would be probably a good candidate for a scholarship at KU in women's rowing.
Yeah, my sister did that.
Yes. Okay. See, KU has women's rowing scholarships. Okay, they're looking for, you know, big athletic girls. Okay, for that. And we've had a few from here, from Bishop Carroll, that have never rowed before.
Yep, that was my sister.
Did she do it for 4 years?
No, just one.
Well, it's a lot of
She
work.
said it's a job.
It is. I mean, you're up at 5 o'clock in the morning and you're on the water. I had a former student that did it at Wichita State. It's a club sport at Wichita State. But yeah, it's a lot of work. Yeah, so those are, you know, for women. And there's just not as many opportunities for men because of football. And I love college football. I mean, I'm a Saturday guy. I'm not a big NFL guy, you know. So, you know, and it brings in a ton of revenue for the schools, football. Just like here, guys. I know football's king. Okay, like I'm down at the bottom of the totem pole here. Spring sports, you know, by then administration's tired. They don't want to do all this stuff. You know, it's just like. Sometimes I feel like we're below soccer. America's pastime. Okay, moving on. All right, you guys decide on that one, okay? In favor of tort reform for medical malpractice lawsuits. Okay, the word tort, guys, basically means court, okay? Tort, court, okay? Now, we have two types of law in our court system. We have criminal law, we have civil, okay? So criminal law is between you and the state. Okay, the government. Okay, you break the law, pay the consequences. Okay? Civil law is between you and somebody else. When you sue somebody. Okay? Okay, lawsuits. Yes? Okay, so we're talking about civil law here. And when it comes to malpractice in the medical field. So let me give you a hypothetical. You are 55 years old. You have diabetes. We have the lockdown, right? And because you have diabetes, that's a big comorbidity with COVID, yes? So you're like isolated. You're staying home. You're not going outside. You're getting your groceries delivered. You're not going out and getting any exercise. You're stagnant. You're just sitting around. Your right foot starts to kind of go numb. And you just kind of ignore it because it's the height of the COVID and they're not really doing anything but COVID at the hospitals. I don't know if you know that. A lot of surgeries were delayed. You know, doctors' offices were shut down. And so you don't go to the doctor and it just kind of gets worse. And pretty soon you lose all feeling in your right foot and you're like, I got to go to the hospital. So you show up in the emergency room. They examine your right foot and it's dead. You've had no blood flow to it for weeks, and basically it's died, and you need to remove it before it gets infected. So you're going to have your right foot amputated. Okay, so you go in for surgery, and the hospital screws up. Doctors, nurses, they screw up, and they accidentally cut off your left foot instead of your right foot. Now they're going to have to still remove the right foot, and now you have no feet. You going to sue the hospital? Yeah. Because, guys, you're going to be constricted to a wheelchair for the rest of your life. You're not going to be able to work like you used to. You're going to lose income. You're going to have to fix your house so that it's wheelchair accessible. You're going to need a van for your wheelchair. You're going to need all this stuff, not to mention the pain and suffering and the anguish of never being able to walk again. So you're going to sue. How much you want? A lot. How much? Give me a number. $1 million, 5, 10, 15 million? Yeah, which one? 10 million. All right, I got to take it, okay? $10 million, okay? And who are you suing? You're suing the hospital? You can sue the doctor, okay? You can sue both of them. Sue the nurses if you want. Now, I don't know if any of you guys have ever had surgery. They are very careful about this. Okay, so like my son had some hand surgery when he was 1. He had both hands operated. He was born like this. Web fingers. Okay, so when he was 1, they separated. Okay, then he had 2 subsequent surgeries, one on this hand, one on this hand. And when he was getting it done on one hand, they wrote like no in magic marker on the hand they're not operating on, so that they don't screw. It's like very obvious, and they'll ask you like 3 or 4 times. And we're doing this on the right hand, correct? Right hand, right. Okay, so they're very careful about this because it has happened. Okay, so $10 million. Now, let's say the hospital wants to fight that, so you go to a jury trial. Okay, and the jury says, you get on the stand and you talk about, and you're crying on the stand, and this jury's feeling sympathy for you, and it's just an awful situation, right? And so the jury says, yes, $10 million. Who's going to pay that? The hospital, doctors, nurses have $10 million laying around. No, just like you have auto insurance for liability purposes, yes? They have insurance. Okay, so the insurance company is going to cover that 10 million. Okay? What's going to happen to the cost of the hospital's insurance if the insurance has to pay out $10 million? It's going to go up. Now, how's the hospital and the doctor going to recoup that money they're spending on insurance? They're going to raise prices on health care for you and I. Yes? To recoup that money. When the insurance, liability insurance for doctors and hospitals is so high, it brings up health care for everybody. So the idea here is that you put caps on how much you can award somebody in one of these cases. If you put a cap on it and say the cap is $5 million, what happens to the cost of insurance? It goes down, which means the cost of healthcare goes down. Okay? Now, Kansas and a lot of other states, there's no federal law on this, okay? Kansas has a cap of $250,000 on non-economic damages, which basically means pain and suffering. So the most you can get is $250K for pain and suffering. Okay. Now the economic damages, like you'll never work again like you used to, the house, the van, all that stuff, Kansas has a limit of $5 million. Not all states do. And there's no federal caps, national caps. Okay. So in states where there's no caps, what happens to the cost of healthcare in those states? It goes up. Okay. Now, some people say this is too much. But you get into other situations like wrongful death cases. Like you go in for a routine surgery like a hernia surgery, or you get your appendix removed or your tonsils removed, and they administer the wrong drug, and you die. Can you put a price on that for the survivors? Like say that happens to a child. You know, one of your children. Is $5 million painful enough to the hospitals and doctors for screwing up? Does it need to be higher than that? Or is $5 million a place where, yeah, I mean, it's a lot of money. We want there to be a deterrent so that hospitals and doctors are very, very careful, yes? We need it they need to feel the pain of screw-ups. You know what I mean? Okay? But at the same time, we have to look out for healthcare costs for the whole country. So this is one of those issues where if you could put caps, now putting a cap on the price of a human being's life is, for some people, just morbid thinking that you can't put a price on it. A jury would determine what that was. Every case is different. So maybe you have a cap for people over the age of 80 for wrongful death, people under the age of 30 wrongful death. I don't know. So if you think, you know, we can help bring the cost of healthcare down by placing caps. I remember in West Virginia, my in-laws used to live there, and doctors were fleeing the state because there were no caps. And the insurance for the doctors was so expensive, they couldn't make a living. Okay, so they were leaving the state short of doctors. Okay, so I don't know, are you in favor of, you know, putting lower caps on the damages to bring down the cost of healthcare? Yeah.
So when it says in favor of tort reform, that's in favor of.
Reforming would be putting caps on it, yeah. Yeah.
But if it was up to the jury to decide the price of fuel, like, how is that any better?
Yeah, so juries tend to be very sympathetic to people in these types of cases, so you you can get in the tens of millions of dollars rewarded to you. So most of the time, what'll happen is the lawyers for the hospital, for the insurance company, will contact the lawyers of the individual and say, okay, how much to settle this lawsuit? They don't want it, the insurance companies do not want this to go to a jury. They don't, so usually they settle. Say, okay, how much to make this lawsuit go away? If they give them a number that's acceptable, they will give them the money without even a trial. That's how most of these are done, okay? And a lot of criminal cases are done like that too, like what's called a plea bargain or a plea deal. Okay, I'll plead guilty if you give me this, and we won't even have a trial. Does that make sense? So that really makes the court system more efficient because we have so many lawsuits, we have so many criminal cases. So plea bargains, deals, and so forth, big part of it. All right, so if you want caps, say yes. If you're saying no, you can't put a cap on this kind of sort of thing, say no. Okay. Okay, number 22, drill for oil in the Gulf of Mexico and ANWR. ANWR is the Alaska National Wildlife Refuge, okay? It's in Alaska. Now, do we drill for oil now in Alaska? Yeah. We built a pipeline back in the 1960s, all the way from Alaska down to the United States. Alaska has more oil than any of the 50 states. Okay, Texas has a lot. We have some in Kansas, right? So the wildlife refuge has a bunch of oil underneath it. Okay, but it's pristine. It's untouched, if you follow me, right? And there are many people that want to keep it that way. Now, our technology with drilling has gotten a lot better. Okay, so normally, wherever you want to drill for oil, you drill straight down. And so you have to have an oil dike right there. Okay, and are you sometimes going to have accidents where oil spills out and you get a mess? Yes. Today, that's not very common. But what you can do now is you can drill here, okay, but you can do horizontal drilling a mile over there from here. So you're drilling for oil way over there or way over there, but your footprint is just right here. You follow me? So if you could do that pretty safely in the wildlife refuge, okay, without having a bunch of them, like this, okay? So, guys, energy independence is something that we achieved in this country 2 years ago. We have enough oil capacity, fossil fuel capacity in this country to survive for centuries without any oil from the Middle East, any oil from Mexico or Venezuela. We can produce it on our own. And the biggest reason for that is fracking. You know what fracking is? Raise your hand if you don't, because I'll explain it. Okay? Okay. So underneath our feet, not here, but if you go to Oklahoma, you go to North Dakota, you go to Texas, you go to Pennsylvania, you go to Colorado, underneath the ground is this rock. It's called oil shale. It's shale rock. And you can drill into that rock and put high-pressured water in there with chemicals, and it'll separate the rock, break up the rock, separate the oil, and you can suck that oil out of the ground. We have an almost unlimited supply. We have no fear of not having enough oil. Okay. Now, obviously, there's a movement in this country to wean ourselves off of oil. Okay. And so the more wind energy or solar energy and so forth that we have, or nuclear energy, then the less oil we need. So that just puts us in better shape, right? So we don't have to worry about when Saddam Hussein invades Kuwait, which has a bunch of oil, and threatens Saudi Arabia, where Saddam Hussein would control 1/3 of the Earth's oil. We don't have to worry about that. We don't have to go to war over there. We have economic security, energy security, because we can produce enough here with fracking. However, there are people that are anti-fracking. So Joe Biden said he was going to do away with fracking. Now he's changed his tune on that because he wants to get elected. And people in Texas and North Dakota and Oklahoma are not going to vote for somebody that is going to cause tens of thousands of jobs to just disappear. They're not going to vote for somebody like that. So he had to change his tune. You understand? So a lot of the Democratic Party has moved against fracking. Now, have any of you guys felt the earthquake in Kansas? Okay, yeah, I felt. Everybody's felt one. Those earthquakes coming from Oklahoma, yes, and most of that is attributed. Scientists are attributing that to fracking. So when you break up that rock, obviously the Earth's going to resettle. Now, none of these earthquakes have been devastating, created a lot of damage or anything like that. Okay, but conceivably could. You also have the issue with groundwater. So that's why we don't do a lot of fracking in Kansas, because we're over that Agala aquifer, which where we get a lot of our drinking water from. So you really don't want to do fracking near an aquifer, because you're going to spoil that clean water source. Does that make sense? There's also things with methane gas and so forth that if it does get into the drinking water systems, okay, you don't want that. Okay, so fracking makes sense in some parts of the country, and others it probably doesn't. Okay, so now if we open up the Alaska National Wildlife Refuge and the Gulf of Mexico, now you guys remember hearing about the big BP spill in the Gulf of Mexico? It was called Deepwater Horizon. Mark Wahlberg did the movie, right? I forget the name of the movie, but it's a good movie, right? And based on true stories. So the problem with the one in the Gulf of Mexico was BP, which is British Petroleum, okay, was they had to do the drilling because of the law way out here in the middle of the Gulf of Mexico, which is really deep. And so when the pipe that goes down from the to the platform to the bottom of the ocean, it broke. It took a month to shut that off because it was so deep. If you drill closer to the shore, it's easier to fix that. Okay, it's not as deep. Okay. Now Florida doesn't want this because beaches. You know, they don't want there to be an accident, and they don't want people to have to look at oil rigs. You did 3 miles off the beach and look about that big. You're laying on the beach. Okay. It's, you know, it's do we want to open up these sources so we don't have to frack, so we don't have to rely on foreign oil? These sorts of things are questions, you know, are the issue there. Okay. The last one you can answer on your own. Does the government do too much for American people, or is it where it should be? Okay? Good? Sorry, Father, there.